My guest on this episode of the Neil Wilkins podcast, I am delighted to welcome, is Raj Singh. Raj is the VP of Product at Mozilla. He's a seasoned entrepreneur as well. He's a product leader with a rich background in AI-driven startups and a whole lot more. He knows a thing or two about where AI is going, and we're going to cover that. And I'm sure a lot of other topics in this conversation. Raj, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Neil. Happy to be here.
So macro stuff, what is the big picture? I mean, obviously at Mozilla, you kind of get almost a sort of a view of the wider kind of issues and challenges, but also opportunities that are happening around the world right now. What are you seeing?
What I like to say is we've gone from from category to layer. So if you look at like 2008 timeframe, in the US at least, in the carrier app stores, they used to have a category called location. Like what, so if you built an app and it used location in some way, it'd be in the location category. Today, what app doesn't take advantage of location? I mean, that's just kind of silly, right? And I think the same thing has now happened with AI. When Siri first came out, it was a category. It was like, oh, you're in the AI part of the market map or the market quadrant or whatever it is. Now it's like, what application doesn't take advantage of AI? And so the so-called year of AI is finally here, and I think it's been very amazing to watch. I think from a macro perspective, at least things that are top of mind for me is just watching how the democratization of, I call it fractional experts, PhD in your pocket. People think of Neuralink as a physical hardware device they want to attach to their head. I'm like, we have Neuralink now. It's actually your phone with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you're using. It's at your fingertips. This has, in my opinion, basically unleashed incredible amounts of creative energy. So we've had all this untapped creativity across the world, but people can't go and execute their ideas because they didn't have access to somebody who could help envision their vision of what this new home would look like, or what this software should do, or what this robot would solve, or whatever it is, or what this medicine would do, or whatever. Now they've got AI at their fingertips with a bunch of fractional experts, and they can vibe create whatever they want through just human conversation, just through a series of chat. And so I think this has unleashed like new levels of creativity. I think what we don't know yet is, and we're watching this play out in real time, the massive productivity boost of AI. Obviously, there's still maybe 1% at this point. I think it's denialism to sort of make the argument that AI is not boosting productivity. I think it was fair maybe 2 years ago, but at this point, it's very clear. What we don't know is we're seeing obviously this transformation of individual contributors everywhere. People are upskilling, people are using AI in their workflows. The massive productivity boost. I like Satya Nadella's quote here, where the CEO of Microsoft, where he talks about a good ROI sort of measurement from Gen AI and whether it ultimately works is, do we 10x our GDP? Do we see that kind of step function, right? Just like the Industrial Revolution, at least within the US. So I think that's one interesting data point. And then I think the other thing is, like, how does this all play out? Like, what is the future UI, right? When I think of Mozilla, I think of a browser, right? We browse the web, you consume content. All of these behaviors are changing. ChatGPT is absorbing applications. If you think of it like right now, Figma is a standalone product, but at some point you just go to ChatGPT and use it like Figma. Expensify, maybe it's a standalone product, but at some point you just go to ChatGPT and use it like Expensify. My analogy here, just to be clear, is think of mobile phone OSs, iOS and Android. Early on, there was like a distinct app store with unique apps, but with every revision of the iOS operating system or the app Android, we get more apps from the App Store that are not built into the OS, right? They're sort of absorbing the most popular workflows and use cases. And AI is doing this in a meaningful way. I mean, we'll see how this all plays out, but I just think this is just such a incredible time to be in technology, but also uncertain time because we don't know how this will play out.
And I think that's one of the key things, isn't it? I think a lot of people are either kind of on the fence waiting to see the playbook. I don't know when that would ever arrive, but, of kind of how you do this stuff that you're talking about, but also just the idea of, is it coming from my job? I mean, that cliche, which we hear everywhere in every single sector now, and it's coming for the way that your job has been done before. It's not necessarily coming for your job, but certainly with, prompting and, as you call it, sort of the whole kind of vibe coding thing is obviously evolving as well. I mean, there are so many different ways now that we can integrate, let's just call it generically, AI into our work. Is just that you can't ignore it, can you? I mean, it is something that just has to be part of the daily, both personal but also definitely professional life.
I think behavior change is really hard. So you've been doing maybe the way you cook something, you've been cooking in a certain way your whole life, and then a new contraption arrives, like the air fryer or whatever, and it could produce a better result, let's say hypothetically, and you're like, but you don't want to adopt it. It's a behavior change. You've been writing an article a certain way, you kind of write out your outline of ideas by hand, you draw it out or whatever it is, and then you translate it. Well, that's your workflow, right? You've created certain workflows. These are your behaviors. It's difficult to change. People who work in the tech sector, I think, are a little bit more used to change because the sector is just moving so fast. But even within the tech sector, you hear stories of VP of sales talking about, I want my sales organization run this way, and I kind of instruct my sales development reps to kind of do this and do that, but he or she doesn't do this. They do it their own way, but they're hitting their quota. So who am I, right, to sort of instruct them to do something differently, right? So people have certain behaviors, workflows. It's difficult to change. Here comes AI, and it is a massive change. And I'll give you a good example. And this example, to be honest, applies to all sorts of domains. But engineering, obviously, is a sector that is really benefiting from Gen AI. And part of the reason is because code is simply a lot easier for a computer to understand than English. English, interestingly, with tonality and inflection of voice and multiple meanings of words and whatnot, language is just harder, right? But code, it just simply either works or it doesn't work. It's very Boolean, right? There's no question mark of what actually were you trying to do. And so historically, engineers, they obviously they contribute to specifications, they review specs, they do a whole bunch of things, but a large part of the day might be writing code, writing tests, running code, verifying it works, reviewing code, etc. Right? Today, for many who are moving into more, let's call it AI assisted programming or agentic programming, whatever you want to call it, they may not be spending a large part of the day writing code, but they're spending an increasing amount of their day writing instructions. They're writing instructions in a prompt, telling the AI, this is the code I need. So this is how I would solve it. These are the different pieces. They're sort of writing requirements. And then they're reviewing code like an editor would and saying, no, this is not right. You should rewrite this part, or this is correct. Let me fix it for you. And so they're playing the role of much more of a conductor and an editor, right? Like they're sort of writing the instructions and then editing and reviewing the code versus writing the code itself. And that's fascinating. That's a mental model shift of what and how an engineer spends their day and where they're spending their primary time. Now, the crazy part about this is this applies to everything, right? Let's take article creation, right? Like people write articles by hand. There's a growing chorus of folks that say, no, that's not the fastest workflow anymore. The fastest workflow is go to your AI, verbalize in a voice conversation all your thoughts about what you want to write about and go back and forth and have a discussion with AI. Spend 10 minutes, right? It's basically you're creating a huge transcript for the AI. The AI has samples of your previous work, and then let the AI write the first draft. And then you act as an editor to say, no, we could do better here, we could do better there. And you're basically training it in that way because now you're providing another sample you could provide back to the AI for your next article that it can learn from. And so you're not necessarily composing the first draft. You're sort of helping through conversation create the content for the first draft, and then you're reading the first draft and editing. And so it's fascinating role by role, anywhere where we're creating, which is pretty much all workflows, right? Whether it's design, whether it's engineering, whether it's your architect, whatever it is, whether it's your attorney, they're drafting something you're creating. The workflows are changing, and it's shifting where you're spending your time and how you think about things. Obviously, this poses challenges to people newer in their careers, right, where they haven't built like sort of foundational knowledge. they don't maybe are not a good writer yet, or they don't know how to even edit because they haven't had to go through that pain yet. And so that's a whole different topic. But I think, again, I think workflow change is hard, but the disruption is happening, and the transformation is slow because it's hard to change workflow. But it is happening, and I do worry. I'm not so worried. I think there's, tech loves to be hyperbolic, so we like to say like, oh, we're going to replace every job with AI. I think that's nonsense. I'm definitely not in that camp, but I'm definitely in the camp that we're going to increase productivity, and there's going to be even more and more jobs. But I am certainly in the camp that you're much more likely not to be replaced by AI, but replaced by a human who's using AI to accelerate, right? And so if you're in the camp where you're not willing to even adapt or adjust your workflow, my recommendation would be like, start documenting your day, like what you're doing every 10 minutes, and just take one or two things out of your day that you're doing every 10 minutes and say, hey, can I use AI to just help that part of it? Or let me just take my notes down of what I did today, give it to the AI and ask it, where can you lowest lift help me in my day based on what I've done today? And just slowly start bringing it in, because I think there's some friction, and there's a learning process, and there's tribal knowledge, but it's important to get on the bandwagon at this point.
So once you start looking at it in that way, then Raj, I mean, is there something that says, we really are kind of not needing the old business model of, if you're looking to take a side hustle to market and actually develop it as your career, or, you've got this genius idea that you want to realize and you're going to start a business, or you're in a kind of startup situation, you're looking to scale, and yet you don't really have the funding, or you don't have the investment or the customers yet to be able to do that AI can now start to support or almost infill those gaps of either technical knowledge that you don't have or specialist skills that you can't yet afford. It feels like this is almost like a plug and play to kind of enable anything, really.
I think, it's funny. So I like to say it's democratizing access to fractional experts, which is why it's creating this massive unlock of creative energy. Like, humans are very creative people, but it's trapped because, you talk to the random person and they have an idea of like the next chip to make, right? Like, chips. I'm from the States, so I'm not talking about French fries. I'm talking about like potato chips. But like, they might, just like this backstory around how like Cheetos was created, right? Like with the spiciness, it was like some random, not random, but like an employee in the organization like had this idea and like, oh, I went and just kind of did it on the side, right? But like, you might have some idea and you can't do it because you don't have, oh, I don't know how to do that part, I don't know how to do this part. But now you have access to this fractional expert on a wide range of topics who can help guide you and direct you. And that, I think, is just an amazing unlock from creative energy, whatnot, right? And so this obviously is resulting in new challenges. Signal noise, there's just the volume of things being created, what's real, what's not real, what has reputation, what's worth even spending time on. But I think this is fascinating to watch. And one of the things I think that's also been interesting is if you look at original Siri, one of the things people were so enamored with was they could ask anything, and they tried to like respond to everything, right? But historically, assistants have not done well in these horizontal use cases, right? They've always been more like you have to direct a use case. And the reason is they just simply couldn't handle the wide variety of things that you could ask. And now we actually have a large language model that has a basic level understanding of like everything. And so you can actually ask anything. And so it's really fascinating for me, just as a sort of product person, saying, wow, we've kind of solved this, like, because it was always a user education issue. Like, how do you deal with like an open-ended assistant versus like a vertically focused assistant? We're there now. Like, we have an example that 6, 7, 800 million people are using every day, right? And people are like, I can ask anything. And I think it's amazing. And we're like learning new ways people are using these tools like every day. Like I think all of this is just so crazy and wild to watch. It's an amazing time to be in tech.
Do you think that it kind of would be sensible for somebody who's looking to take this beyond the traditional or typical starting point of I'm going to use it to write my next social media post, and actually start to think of this as being either an assistant, a PA, a guide, an advisor, a buddy, whatever you want to kind of call your AI kind of help, if you like, and literally just focus on one. Or kind of to your point about this whole idea of sort of specialist areas, is it worth having almost a range of them? So you're going to call on one platform or one AI to do something and then another for another, because it feels like initially that's going to take a lot of bandwidth and time to almost sort of create them in the way that you want them, to be able to prompt them, to be able to set them up. Or is it worth just starting with one and doubling down on that?
So I think there's a few things here, right? So I think the first step, so for the vast majority of people, I don't think they need to use a range of specialized tools. And the reason I say that is one of the most common questions I get, like, how do I start? I don't know what to use. And I always respond saying, you don't need state of the art. Like, you're not doing like the cutting edge, blah, blah, blah in your day-to-day work. I'm not either, right? Like 98% is like good enough, right? And any of the existing chatbots are there at this point, right? So just choose one, whatever's most convenient, what you can expense or whatever it is, who knows, and start using, right? So there's kind of that. I think there's a separate question of you're doing very specific work and you need access to like, the most expert possible results, and it has access to specialized corpuses of data or private information or whatever it is, who knows? Sure, right? I think in that case, you're like deep research is a good example from ChatGPT, right? It's very much focused on like, let me go super deep by running a bunch of agentic workflows in the background to then generate you something that's a whole nother layer for strategy teams or for finance teams or whatnot, or doing competitive analysis or market research teams or whatever. And there's probably an equivalent of that for, medicine design and for other sorts of sectors, whatnot. Now, ultimately, their intent is, I want to bring that level of knowledge into the general purpose model, right? Like, and the knowledge is probably there, but like that level of execution, but they can't, because it's cost prohibitive, it's energy prohibitive, it's compute prohibitive, obviously. So there's a lot of barriers that we still need to solve to sort of make the level of AI access at our fingertips available to all in a cheaply economical way, that in a sort of model that works. But I think the other example that's also important is the AI is one part of the process, but AI is not perfect, right? There's still workflows around it, right? So let's take, for example, the legal profession. You might be using AI to help you draft your contracts or review or edit your contracts. But there's all the work before and after that as well, right? Like, you need to communicate with your client. You need to have a discussion on the phone. You need to put things in certain folders. You may need to file certain things with the city or the government or the law office. You need to mail certain paper copies. You have to collect signatures. There's all this workflow around it, right? And that's not going away. And you still need a human in the loop to kind of review it. And so I think what you're seeing right now, like in SaaS, for example, is product by product, reimagining what the experience might look like in a Gen AI first perspective. And I think it's very interesting because they're kind of taking an existing workflow and they're saying, hey, what if it was built Gen AI first, where the energy isn't spent on sort of drafting the initial draft, but it's rather in editing and reviewing, but we still have all the workflow around it. And these companies are showing massive growth, depending on what case, right? Obviously, it's very competitive, but it's amazing. I mean, like, we keep breaking how fast people get to 100 million ARR. The time frame, it's insane.
So that kind of AI first then is a whole different way of thinking about it, isn't it? Because the old original way of like, I've got this side hustle, I want to build it into a business, so then I've got to then create my processes and get all the specialist support I need. This is actually almost flipping it on its head and saying, no, actually what we've got to do is kind of almost work backwards from end result and see where AI can just either replicate, duplicate, or replace all the old kind of systems and processes. There's a way of really reimagining how we do business here, isn't there?
I think of Gen AI. So I think of Vibe or chat as a communication part, as a new modality. So a way to sort of think about this is like the advent of the keyboard or the advent of the mouse or the advent of the touchscreen with the iPhone and iPad. These were new modalities. And so when you have a new modality, in this case, we have literally human conversation as a way to instruct and direct and whatnot, it is going to require reimagining of what the user experience looks like. That doesn't mean you don't have existing products that are trying to figure out how to bring in Gen AI experiences into their core product. But in many instances, it might mean rethinking what the whole product feels like because it's just a completely different kind of experience. And so I think therein lies the opportunity for startups. Now, your comment about solopreneurs, yeah, I mean, you have solopreneurs to the tech sector, but like you have a much bigger segment. You have this entire sort of freelancer, side hustle. This is a sector that's very dear to me because this is what I work on at Mozilla through Solo and other products that we have. But these are people with passion projects. Maybe they're a mural painter, maybe they're a hairstylist, maybe they do online coaching. Who knows, right? Certain passions that they've leaned into, their superpowers, things that they're really good at, and Gen AI has been such an incredible unlock for this audience. It's just been amazing, right? So this is an audience where they're time constrained because they're often doing it as a side hustle. They have some access to help, but not a lot, right? They don't know certain whole areas like, oh, how do I grow? I don't know how to buy ads on Google or whatever it might be, right? And so Gen AI has sort of now become their personal assistant in that, and they're able to get way further than they may have been before. They might even be depending on their level of sophistication, they might even be building small tools to help accelerate their workflow. So I think all of that is just such an exciting category, and it kind of plays into this macro trend around just be your own boss, having more control and autonomy over your day, just where things are going.
So is it then just a case, I'm going to say it really flippantly, but just a case of prompting and learning the tech and kind of how, best practice is beginning to play out? Or is there something in this that still kind of retains the human bit? Because otherwise we're all going to end up being able to do the same stuff and delivering the same kind of outputs and being the same kind of businesses. And there's going to be a real kind of almost like new vanilla, a new kind of ground zero, isn't there? How are we going to be able to differentiate?
I don't think of it. So a couple things there. So I think products still have, there's a term that's like loosely defined called taste, which is like sensibility, judgment. It has your vision of what and how a thing should operate. It has your touch, your taste. And so I don't feel things won't be undifferentiated. Obviously, if you go and just publish and release a bunch of just AI generated output without spending any of your sort of human touch or taste, yes, it's going to feel like slop. It's going to feel like you're just spamming the internet, and these products may not be getting much adoption for that reason, right? They don't have a point of view. They don't have a perspective. They don't have your TLC or whatever it is, right? Your tender love and care, like to build and shape exactly what you think the future of the world will look like. So I'm not so concerned about that. However, I do think, to your first sort of comment about prompting and whatnot, I don't think this can be learned from just like watching YouTube. I think I watch plenty of YouTube, incredible tutorials. I follow lots of great builders on Twitter, X, whatnot, etc. I think the challenge here is there's so much tribal knowledge that you actually have to go and just do it yourself. Like, yes, you find peers in your group that maybe you can do AI show and tell, but you have to actually do it yourself. You have to go through the pain. You have to see what it's like to prompt and like it doesn't get it right, and like how do I correct that? And what do I do next? And then the other part here is, yes, there are some best practices, but it's fluid because the best practices today are not the best practices tomorrow because it's evolving so fast. And so you really need to integrate it as part of your workflow. Otherwise, you may fall behind. And all of this, again, feels super uncomfortable. Like if you've been mostly operating in a world where you can kind of do the same thing every day, right? Like the way you've worked, the way you've learned, that's not where we are now, right? And this is why even from, I'm curious, like university and education and how that's all going to transform, I don't think the current model works. Like I think ChatGPT has shown to be a much better educator in the schools that they've tested with, at least here in the US, than the normal sort of teaching flow. So how do they bring this into the process? Because it's basically personalized learning. And so I just think I think I would lean into more uh, curiosity, archetypes that have some agency. They want to kind of like, they want to figure this out, solve it. They're curious. They're evergreen learners, right? Because this is like, uh, these are probably the archetypal features or whatnot, or attributes that are going to really accelerate in this kind of new environment.
It's exciting, isn't it? And then when you talk about personalization there, I guess another one is this whole kind of hyper scaling, which I suppose, is again, everything seems to have hyper on it. And I guess there's the intention there. It's like we can do this at a kind of a scale or a size or a speed that we could never do before, be it efficiencies, automation, personalization, etc. But certainly one of these things in terms of, say, scaling or growth hacking, in other words, scaling a business that would have been restrained, rather, get the words out, to a kind of almost a human resource level. So as it was very much dependent on how many people you had available to be able to scale with. Now we can do this kind of hyperscaling using AI. Do you feel that this is going to be the big accelerator for businesses who get it right in the way that you've defined it there? They realize they've got a particular area of the market. They've worked with their taste, so the thing is actually appropriate for market. They can now hyperscale. Is this where AI is going to really score for the winners and make them win even bigger than they would have done before?
I think I think we're kind of seeing this already. Like we're seeing AI drive a lot of efficiency in organizations. And I think right now the anxiety or the unknown here is they're still figuring it out. Like they're kind of going department by department and saying, hey, we can automate some of this and we can get 3x the output here, and we don't need as many people here, right? And then I think this is kind of the first step in a process. But then they're sort of like, but we need a lot more help in this new area that we didn't know about. We need humans in the loop who are good at this versus what we were previously doing, who can work with AI. And so growing here, right? And so there's kind of this constant sort of rejiggering of the, reorganizing the workforce, right? But like inevitably companies, they're not going to build less. If there's AI that's getting me 3, 5, 10x more productivity output, they're just going to build more, right? Because every company wants to own everything, right? And that's ultimately the game, right? Netflix would love to also be Spotify and would also love to be TikTok, right? It wants to own it all, right? It wants to get all your available minutes, boredom minutes each day. And the same thing applies to every sort of product, right? So the world's going to certainly become more competitive, and it's going to be about execution. But the humans in the loop, they're not going away. And AI, just to be clear, and this was the case in 2010, and this is like pre-large language models. This is pre even like machine learning at that point. Back then, it was more heuristics and semantic based and whatnot. But even like machine learning era in 2015, 16, 17, 18, whatever, like it's been consistently what I like to say 95%. And what I mean by that is it's not precise. It's 95% accurate. And so you have to really think about when you're designing your user experience or what workflows you're going after, where is 95% acceptable? Like if I'm using AI to suggest content that you should go watch or read, that's 95% is perfectly fine, right? If I'm using AI to draft the first version of your website, like we do at Solo at Mozilla, that's perfectly fine because you can go and edit and personalize it and make it perfect, right? But if I'm using AI to automatically schedule meetings in my calendar based on email communication, like 95% is not good enough. Like you get a meeting invite wrong, like that's a huge penalty. Like you're dealing with people's time and people's calendar. Like it has to be perfect. If I'm doing self-driving cars, 95% isn't good enough, right? You're dealing with like human life and death and fatality and whatnot, right? And so you really have to go case by case and think about what workflow you're trying to solve, and then where AI comes in the loop, and then where humans remain in the loop, or what parts they're doing, or whatnot, because it really depends. But at a macro level, I fully expect this productivity unleash to just create more businesses, more entrepreneurs, more entrepreneurship, more solopreneurship, but companies just continue to get bigger in scale in an ever more competitive world.
Exciting, isn't it? And as you say, I know the tech industry embraced change over the years, and it's never been faster. It's never been more of a perfect storm. But I think for a lot of us who love, maybe we're on the edge of the tech industry and the work that we do, but we just love change because it's opportunity, and there comes the excitement of being in business and enjoying life. Really, I think this is a wonderful time to be alive and to be doing what we do. It's really exciting. As far as you can tell us, and I know you're not able to spill the beans on absolutely everything, but Raj, in terms of Mozilla and kind of what the work that you're doing in this space, are there kind of specific areas that you're focusing on? Are there particular kind of products and things that we can expect in the not too distant future? I know you can't obviously share everything, but are there sort of plans and patterns afoot for things that we can be getting ready for?
For sure. No. So, Mozilla itself, obviously, Firefox, the best browser. I'm saying, but definitely, that's what we're known for. I focus on new products for small business. I've mostly been focused on the solopreneur. We have Mozilla Solo that we've released, which is an AI website builder. It's kind of a first step, and part of that came from an early recognition that we found a lot of people who have a side hustle or a freelance job or whatnot. They often build it through their friends, right? So that there's like they have a WhatsApp group, and they're like, "Hey, I realized I'm pretty good at cake making, and I start doing it for some of my buddies' weddings, and like, oh, let me show this to more people." And so they go set up an Instagram page, and then they start getting some pings there, and then at some point they go, hey, I want to legitimize this even further. I want to grow this. I need a website, right? So we found that was like kind of a stepping stone in that process. But then you start breaking down like what are all the pains in their business, right? The first thing that comes to mind is like, well, I want to grow this business. Growth is really hard, right? This is a super noisy world. Like there's so much content. People are trying to play the Google game. The amount of websites published each day might be doubling. I mean, I don't know what the stat is, but it's insane, right? And so they're like, I want to create a blog. I want to create a social media identity. So we're thinking about tools there. Can we help you think about what a Gen AI first blog creation platform might look like? Maybe it starts with voice and conversation and then leads to a first draft. What does a Gen AI social media experience look like? Maybe it starts with an article you read and then you want to pull out content from there and turn it into a neat post. Or maybe start rehashing old posts, right? So you start looking at growth. Then you're like, okay, well, now I've got to deal with like my end of year taxes and billing and all this kind of stuff. Like, how do I deal with that, right? So then we're like, okay, well, what if, you obviously you could go use QuickBooks, you could use Excel, but these are complicated apps, right? They're like a lot of buttons, a lot of switches. Do you need all of this? And they're not really built first from a Gen AI perspective. So then we're looking at that. Like, what does a Gen AI back office or accounting experience look like, where it kind of just pulls in your income, pulls in your expenses, and sort of generates it all for you to make your life easier so you can just save time. Maybe you're a plumber. Maybe you're Joe the plumber, and you're busy on a job and you get all these calls and you're losing all these leads. So right now, most of that goes to voicemail, and voicemail kind of sucks. They're not sending text messages or whatever it might be, right? And so we're looking at that. Like, can we build you a little voice bot that can maybe answer calls on your behalf and make sure you don't lose those leads, right? So we're looking at every part of the workflow where there's pain experienced by a solopreneur. It could be scheduling, could be calendaring, it could whatever it might be. And seeing how we can reinvent that experience from a Gen AI perspective and kind of wrapping it all into a suite to really give that solopreneur the opportunity to just sort of accelerate and focus on what they're good at, which is maybe it is plumbing, maybe it's mural painting, maybe it's making cakes, right? And they don't have to spend their time and all that overhead that sort of eats up their day.
Wow, it's so exciting, and so many different kind of facets to this and little kind of nuances within each area that you're looking at. I mean, honestly, every day must just be an absolute delight for you.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I think one of the things that's most fun about this category is everyone knows somebody who's got some side business and needs some help with something, right? And that's what makes this really neat, because you are really impacting people and these are people maybe close to you, because these people are trying to make it, as a one-person business or a two-person business and leave their day job or whatever it might be. And so it really feels like you're democratizing entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, and that's a really aspirational goal.
It's wonderful. And I really, really applaud the work that you and the team are doing, because I think, for all of us, even if some people listening and watching this might be thinking, well, I'm not really a solopreneur, not really going to work on a side hustle, but actually I'm going to stay in touch because I'm going to watch what you guys are doing, because I know it's going to play out at some point in the work that I'm doing. I'm employed and that's fine, but I'm going to see it. It's going to materialize in my world too. It feels like this is quite pioneering kind of thought leadership, really. Is that how you sort of position yourself?
Do I position myself as pioneering thought leadership? I don't know if I would use those terms. I think I've always been curious, and I'm a consummate learner, and I love to learn. And and I've been I try to stay on the edge of tech. I'm not like on the edge, but what things that can help sort of improve my workflow. My background has been mostly my own startups. I landed at Mozilla through acquisition of my previous company. And so I think when you're coming in with that mindset, where you're a builder, it's even intrinsic motivation to always be following what's happening and looking at how new things can unlock new potential in the future.
These are such exciting times, and it's been a great conversation. I really enjoyed kind of just exploring ideas and just kind of almost sort of generating the energy around this, because I think once people get the passion for this stuff, you've just got to hook into some, and this is why I kind of sort of almost seeded you there as the thought leader in this area, because you just need to hook into some people who are well connected in this space and just watch and absorb. And as you say, consummate learner is the way to do this, because we've all got to be like a sponge to kind of just absorb everything and spot the opportunities that are going to stick for us individually. So how can people connect with you? You've got a link tree, I think.
Yes. I'm my link tree, which is /mobileraj, LinkedIn as well. You can find me there, or on X or Twitter. I actively post about VC startups, product management, AI. It's /mobileraj there as well. So you should be able to find me any one of those places.
Wonderful. Really, really enjoyed this, Raj. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy guy, and I need to let you go, but thank you so, so much on behalf of the audience for sharing everything that you have in this session.
Thank you, Neil. Enjoyed the conversation.